There are 3 days left. 3 days left to save primary steel production in Britain. There has to be an immediate nationalisation of this plant, an immediate nationalisation of primary steel production in Britain. If the government don't act by Friday, that is the end of steel making in our country, which frankly, in the modern world, is unthinkable.
Scunthorpe is under threat. The local steelworks could soon close after British Steel announced its blast furnaces were no longer financially sustainable. The closure of the Chinese-owned company could put up to 2,700 jobs at risk and resign an entire town to the dole. In September, Labour failed to prevent the loss of 2,500 jobs in Port Talbot. Tata Steel took £500 million from the taxpayer, then switched off the blast furnace. Government have not yet committed to nationalisation. But on a sunny Wednesday, Reform leader Nigel Farage did. It's sort of like how Donald Trump campaigned for president on a promise to bring back American manufacturing. Scunthorpe, facing imminent peril, is exactly the sort of place the party is convinced can be won. Without swift action, the Labour leader could be the Prime Minister that kills off British Steel, and in turn, a second town's entire economy in just 6 months. Voters could take that grievance to the ballot box.
Can you tell me what's going on with the steelworks?
It's on the verge of shutting really. Jingley haven't committed to any raw materials for blast furnaces. We've got enough raw materials on site to last till 9th of May with 2 blast furnaces, or 23rd of May if they turn 1 blast furnace off and run with 1. If they don't get any materials in soon, the blast furnaces could end up shutting.
Can you tell me what that would mean for job losses?
2,700 job losses with no blast furnaces whatsoever. Possibly the full plant could shut in June till they wait for the electric arc furnaces to be built, which could be 3 years' time. Back end of 2007 or beginning of 2008, I reckon, to build the electric arc furnaces.
And can you tell me what that would mean for the area? Because it's not just 2,700 jobs that would be lost here. What would that mean for the surrounding area?
Yeah, you got obviously 2,700 high-paid jobs that could be lost, which will affect the whole community. It could affect 20 to 30,000 people around here. Supply chain companies who skip companies and rubbish removal companies who come on site, HGV drivers who are in and out all the time, the likes of your local pubs. If you've lost 2,700 jobs, people aren't going to have the money to spend in pubs. Infrastructure of the town. I mean, who's going to be building new houses around here? Who's going to have the money to do out like that around here? No one.
I worked 40 years on coke ovens.
Wow. What was that like?
Hell.
Hard work?
Hell. It's nicknamed Dante's Inferno. If the steelworks dies, the town will completely die. I mean, this is a ghost. This is a shadow to what the town used to be. There used to be shops all the way up there, all the way up the high street. And compared to what it is, it's a ghost town. I mean, if the steelworks is closed altogether, you've only got to look at what happened with Redcar after Redcar shut. Now, it's a hive of crime, drugs and all sorts. You know, that's going to happen here. There's nothing else. All the industries depend on all engineering industries and light industries around here depend on the steelworks. The steelworks is the heart. If the steelworks catches a cold, the town catches pneumonia.
But also the pubs, the restaurants, everything.
There's no end of pubs and restaurants shut down to what used to be in this town. Even Indian takeaways have shut down, you know, because there's less and less money going through the system. I think the steelworks should be renationalised. We're on the brink of another world war. China's itching its mitts to kick it off. Putin's doing his damnedest to start it. It's about time it was renationalised while we've still got it there.
The mood is very difficult. This is a hugely challenging time for the local community and steelworkers and their families in particular. You know, I've had people in a very, very difficult situation talking to me wherever I am over the last few days. And I think also that some of that genuine and difficult concern about the future for them in their jobs and livelihoods, the future for our area, but also that concern is now turning to anger, I think, anger at the way in which the Chinese owner Jingye is behaving. They should be good custodians of this industry. They've got a responsibility to this industry, yet they are behaving almost in a reckless fashion at the moment, which is not what they should be doing. They're in a period of formal legal consultation about the future of this business. They should be running that business in a secure and safe and proper way during the period of that consultation.
I know that the government has offered a sum, we think it's around £500 million to the current owners, but do you think perhaps their rejection of the offer that's on the table makes the case for nationalisation?
The incoming Labour government made clear that there will be £2.5 billion to invest in the transformation of the UK steel industry. There isn't an endless pot of public money that can be spent. You know, personally, I would be very much in favour of it in terms of supporting our steel industry and jobs in Scunthorpe, but there will become challenges from people, you know, populist politicians who might be cheering on the idea of nationalisation today. They're exactly the sort of populist politicians that will be saying you can't spend money forever without a return. So be wary of them, I say.
I don't want to make an assumption, but perhaps you're talking there about Nigel Farage, who is actually visiting the steelworks today, and they are going to make the case for nationalisation. They're also making the case that this is sort of net zero crazy, and that's the reason why the steelworks are having to close. Do you think that argument is fair? Is this because of net zero?
Populist politicians will come up with easy answers, and easy answers are really attractive. They're attractive to me, frankly. I'd like to believe them, but of course, it's not true. The whole world is having to tackle climate change, and things need to be done in a managed way. But we will need a steel industry, and steel made in Scunthorpe in an energy efficient way will be greener steel than steel made in China or India or elsewhere in the world. So we need, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, he said we need to look at all options to find a future for our steel industry, and that's what people who are rolling up their sleeves and getting on with the jobs instead of hectoring and shouting from the shadows are doing, and that's responsibility of government.
If this steelworks closes, we're going to be the only country in the G7 that doesn't produce our own virgin steel. Is that a concern?
I think the tariffs, although they're very important and very difficult, I think they're a distraction to this issue. I don't think they're pertinent to the problems we're facing in British steel at the moment. I think the issue that you raise about the security and the importance of steel making, particularly construction steel making. We make rail, we make construction steel for our buildings and bridges and tunnels in Scunthorpe and Teesside. That is crucial, I would argue, for the security infrastructure of our country.
I don't think that the government is without faults in this circumstance, but in contrast to what happened in Port Talbot towards the end of last year, we are at the table having conversations. Ministers are calling meetings with the trade unions when announcements are coming and making sure that we're briefed on that and not briefed from the press. And that is in a stark contrast to the previous government. But I think the sort of proof will be in the pudding, because they're really clear. We're really clear on what we're asking for, and the workforce are really clear in terms of what they're asking for, and that is a government stake nationalisation of the steel industry, of British Steel, to make sure that we can secure those jobs, at least in the short term, and have some space to figure out a fair plan for the workforce. And now we just need the government to make that decision. The most that people will walk out with, unless we negotiate a higher package, is a month's wage. So that doesn't really give anyone any breathing space to sort of pivot to what they want to do next. And we keep being told about new and emerging technologies, especially green technologies, but those jobs don't exist yet. And so I think the sort of cornerstone of the trade unions plan is to sort of elongate the transition process, and with it let workers have time and space to see what comes next if they're not going to work in the steel industry anymore, rather than a complete cliff edge potentially in 6 weeks' time.
Nigel, are you to the left of Keir Starmer?
It's difficult to work out where he is on anything. I mean, when I heard him criticising globalisation at the weekend, I thought, crikey, I've been saying that for 30 years. I think the thing that's about Starmer that's really coming through is he just says what Morgan McSweeney tells him to say and doesn't actually believe in anything. We're not to the left, but we do believe there is something called the national interest. And this isn't being closed because of normal free market conditions. You know, we have imposed upon British industry the absurdity of net zero policy to a level that no other country in the Western world is doing. It's an act of economic harry-carry. That's what's forced us into this mess.
But that's not the issue here, right? Is it here you're calling for nationalisation? And is that because it's a national security issue?
Well, here the issue is energy costs. Energy costs destroying the steel industry. Of that there is absolutely no doubt. And what we're saying here, it must be nationalised because time is so short.
You've spent a lot of time in Skegness recently, and I've just seen one of your staff members holding a Unite banner, which shocked me. That's a union literature banner. Has being in Skegness, has that softened you to the workers' cause?
Look, it's fantastic because we're actually the party of common sense. We work with everybody. We work with everybody.
I think there's a mistake being made here. The trade unions' interests and the workers' interests are not always the same thing, but to be fair, I mean, the boss of the GMB has been really quite outspoken on many issues that we would agree with him with, others we wouldn't agree with, and the unions, of course, are very, very political, quite party political as well. But look, I think above all, our voters are the types of people who get up in the morning and go to work and pay tax and try and obey the law, and that's where our voter base comes from. So they're the people, above all, that we want to stand up and protect. And frankly, if we haven't got a working population, we haven't got tax coming in, we'd be in even deeper trouble than.
You want to nationalise the steel industry, or the steelworks in particular. Would you nationalise water?
No, I would let the companies go bust. I cannot understand, if you've invested in Thames Water, you're a bondholder in Thames Water. As far as I'm concerned, you deserve to lose every single penny. Let them go bust and start again. And quite why governments think they have to come in and bail out failing companies is completely and utterly beyond me.
Anything to add?
Well, actually, if it goes bust, then actually the government, on behalf of the taxpayer, could do a great deal. Buy it for £1,
sell it,
and then do a joint venture. The public could own half of it. British pension funds could own half of it. Bring in great management that doesn't over-leverage it, and then we get a sensible deal. Invest properly in the infrastructure. Great opportunity. Sounds like common sense.
See, this is what the British government needs. Some people who've got some idea of doing a deal. There are none at the moment.
At time of publishing, Labour had not announced a solid decision on nationalising the steelworks, but they had hinted at it.
We have made an offer, but all options are on the table in relation to Scunthorpe. I think it's really important, and we're in the middle of those discussions.
It begs the question, did Nigel Farage influence this change in policy? Would Labour be considering it had he left the topic alone? And what will happen to the town of Scunthorpe if there is no government intervention?